I mean, it's a no-brainer if you ask me. Matt Campbell is changing this one thing about Penn State's recruiting strategy, and it's really something they should have been doing all along.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State football. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network out there. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. We put the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work. Now that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Also, shout out to Thon, nearly raising $19 million. Shout out to the organization and the incredible work and effort that they put in every single year to make such a huge difference. We are talking about the Kashif Moore hire. Was Moore the right hire? Who is he? What is he bringing in terms of his resume? What is the outlook for this Penn State wide receiver room? Because I have some questions about the depth after the first three leading wide receivers, and how will recruiting look in 2027? And this all ties together with Kashif Moore and Penn State's new priorities now with Matt Campbell changing the focus when it comes to Penn State recruiting. And this is something that should have been a priority right from the start. I'm talking back to when James Franklin was the head coach, and he started to get to prioritizing the state of New Jersey. And that is what is clearly, after Pennsylvania, going to be the next most important state for Matt Campbell and this recruiting staff. I mean, actions speak louder than words. You not only get one, but two position coaches that have ties to the state of New Jersey, that are from the state of New Jersey. Savon Huggins, your new running backs coach, who comes from Boston College, but he is from New Jersey originally. And then Kashif Moore, who is from New Jersey originally, coached at UConn, played at UConn, so has ties all throughout the Northeast. Again, we'll talk more about Kashif Moore later on. But New Jersey should absolutely be priority number 2 for Penn State. Not the DMV. Yes, you're going to stay in the Midwest. You're actually expanding into the West Coast with Danton Lynn, with Ikaika Malloy, which I am not against at all. I think that Penn State's footprint right now is really strategic with what Matt Campbell is focusing on, which should be Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Yes, you're going to hit New York. If you happen to get the DC, Maryland, Virginia area still, that is fine. I don't think that Penn State needs to compromise the DMV, but what they should be focusing on primarily is, yes, dominate the state. You are Penn State. You are the state school. Pennsylvania is non-negotiable. But then after that, New Jersey should have always been the second focus. And I'm not going to criticize fully here of what James Franklin's previous plan was. He tried to branch into New Jersey, but it didn't really seem like it was that much of an effort. I look back at some of these other recruiting classes, and I'm thinking, okay, really not a lot of effort put forth in New Jersey. But that had to do with James Franklin. Okay, so his ties were in the state of Maryland, which you're going to get Virginia, and you're going to get DC a part of it. It's called the DMV for a reason. They're all kind of interconnected there. So I can understand that. But what I don't understand is not pushing into New Jersey and focusing on maybe a state like Florida. Notice how Penn State really isn't trying to push into Florida anymore. They're actually going more towards the West Coast. Again, Danton Lim, Penn State grad, but coached at UCLA, USC, Ikaika Malloy, are coming over from UCLA. So that is natural. But notice what Penn State's doing here. Staying close to home, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and then staying in the Midwest, because that's where Matt Campbell and, of course, a lot of the other assistant coaches, that is where their primary recruiting connections are. So this is actually something that I think fits Penn State very well, because it's going to be easier to keep local talent than it is. Now I know, okay, California is an exception here if they're going to go that far across the country. But to really emphasize Florida or go down to the southeast part of the country, I don't think should be Penn State's focus. Okay, New Jersey is give or take a 3 to 4 hour drive. Florida is, well, a 3 hour plane ride, right? New Jersey has really good talent too. Again, Matt Campbell's intentions are clear. You don't accidentally get 2 position coaches to focus on the state of New Jersey. That is not by accident. You also have one of your recruiting coordinators in Naz Oliver being another link to the state of New Jersey. That is 3 points of emphasis. That is three figures now in the recruiting department in some capacity that are focusing on one state. So you can see what Matt Campbell's trying to do. The state of New Jersey has talent. And while Pennsylvania is always going to be the focus, New Jersey, I would say, has fairly comparable talent, at least in the class of 2027, where there are at least 10 prospects, give or take, in the top 300 nationally, similarly to Pennsylvania. So to put it in perspective, you can see why Matt Campbell's doing this. And I'm not sure why this wasn't a focus long-term for Penn State. It was only until last year that James Franklin had prioritized New Jersey as much as he did. And he got a number of recruits, right? Malachi Goodman was from the state of New Jersey. He's staying at Penn State, right? He didn't transfer out. He didn't go into the portal. Okay, I think that's a win in itself for Matt Campbell to keep a 5-star player. Separate conversation. We've had those conversations. But just notice that, okay, well, New Jersey, it's a smaller state. They're not going to have as much talent. No, there is plenty of talent that you're going to want to recruit out of the state of New Jersey. So I like what Matt Campbell is doing here as far as the recruiting footprint goes. It's going to be better in terms of the talent that you're able to bring in from the high school ranks. There's not going to be a drop off in talent just because you shift your focus from the DMV and Florida up to New Jersey. I would say that you're seeing a slight increase in talent. And I know that Florida is loaded, but this is the second part of it. Your retention rate, your commitment rate. The amount of players that Penn State was getting out of the state of Florida was what, maybe 1 or 2? And they are more likely to transfer out because of proximity, okay? It's far from home for some people. Okay, we saw that in some cases. We also saw some players stay all the way through. Hey, let's take Zane Durant, for example. Katron Allen was originally from Virginia and then played high school ball in Florida, so I guess maybe I shouldn't bring him up as an example, but Zane Durant from the state of Florida and ended up staying his entire time at Penn State. Okay, but that's the exception for an example, not necessarily the standard. And we've already talked to Brian about this. This is absolutely a no-brainer here to focus on an area that's just closer to home, and you're going to have a better commitment rate, a better retention rate, and no changes in terms of talent. And arguably, because of how much more success you're going to have, you are going to get more talent as a result. So, not sure why Penn State wasn't focusing on New Jersey to begin with. There are tons of talented players out of that state. You combine Pennsylvania and New Jersey together, you should have very good recruiting classes coming up for the Nittany Lions in the not too distant future. 2027, which is the one they're focusing on right now, but further out, I think 28, 29. Okay, that's a long ways away into the future, but this is the foundation that you want if you're Matt Campbell. This is how you want to set the tone early on. And this is what's going to start to change Penn State football for the better. And it begins in recruiting. And I'm glad he's still making high school football. The priority here was still supplementing through the transfer portal. Iowa State, this was just a one-off situation because he had a really good team put together that, yes, you're going to bring those players over with you to Penn State. But it's still won through high school recruiting. So that's Matt Campbell's blueprint right now. And I like it a ton with what they're going to be able to do. Clearly, it's It's the focus at this point in time. Now, what's the plan for wide receiver? Because that position group needs an overhaul. Kashif Moore comes in with, well, it can't get any worse, right? So nowhere to go but up. But what does it actually look like for Penn State in the short term, but also long term with the recruiting impact? That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, your inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. We're talking skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than just what's on the screen. This is where we highlight a player, an athlete, a play, a fan, a coach, something that really defines sports. And I'm going to go with Penn State wrestler Levi Haynes, the lone senior in the lineup. Goes out and gets a pin in his final home match as a Penn State wrestler. Way to cap off a career in a Penn State singlet. These moments remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the mat, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and the I never quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Mazda, move and be moved. Did you know you can get Locked On Nittany Lions ad-free? All you got to do is become a member of the Everydayer Club. Check the link down in the show notes to learn more. Penn State's wide receiver room. Well, there is nowhere else to go but up at this point. I'm going to tell you about what this room offers and then what Penn State's plans are for the future, because there is a ton of talent. It's almost like they can't mess up the class of 2027, but Kashif Moore has his work cut out from him, and we'll talk about Kashif Moore more in segment 3. But what is he working with in 2026 and then beyond? Well, this wide receiver room, I think it is a little limited in terms of depth. I will be honest there. The main 3 players out of this room are going to be the 2 transfers from Iowa State in Brad Eskilson and Chase Sowell, and then Kobe Howard, who they were able to retain. Those will be somewhat, Penn State's going to run a lot of 12, maybe even some 13 personnel. The tight end room is stacked. So Penn State's game plan, for the most part, is going to be running the football effectively, incorporating the tight ends, so it won't be on this over-reliance. Don't think that Penn State is going to run a ton of 3, 4 wide receiver sets. In theory, they could. I still need to see more from this group. I like what Brett Eskilson gives you. I like what Chase Sowell gives you. We all saw what Kobe Howard was able to do in a limited, confusing, why isn't he playing more type of role in 2025. In 2026, I'm fully expecting a breakout season from Kobe Howard. I think with someone like Kashif Moore, young, innovative mind, who will be able to start to unlock what Kobe Howard, and Kobe Howard was already starting to do that. So even with Kashif Moore now at the helm, I think Kobe Howard was always going to take that next step one way or another because of the player, because of the caliber of prospect that he is when it comes to football. Brett Eskilson is a speed guy. This is going to be, he can be your deep threat. You get him a screen pass and he can run with it. I mean, this guy is fast. He is quick. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. So it's not like he's some small, shifty kind of receiver. No, he's got a solid build as a pass catcher. but it's the afterburners that really separate him from other wide receivers. So I'm eager to see what Brett Eskilson can do as that deep threat for Penn State this season. Chase Sowell is most likely going to be Penn State's number one wide receiver because he can do everything. He can be your big play threat, your intermediate, and your short passing game player. He is going to be the X wide receiver. They're going to get him the ball a ton. What I like about Chase Sowell most importantly is that ability to go up and make the big play. One-on-one coverage, Rocco Becht has shown time and time again a season ago that he will trust him. He will trust him in one-on-one situations. And that is what I think Penn State has been lacking, because I don't even think that they needed a superstar wide receiver, but just somebody that was going to make a play when you needed them to do that the most in a given situation. I mean, gosh, Penn State was 3 points away in a semifinal game, not a single catch by a wide receiver. So just think about, if the wide receivers gave you some production in that game, would that result have been any different in any of those close games against Ohio State and Michigan if you just got something from the wide receivers in those moments? But that is what Chase Sowell does, is you can trust him. So I don't know that I necessarily see Sowell or Eskilson. Howard in due time. I think Howard is just starting to tap into his potential. But Sowell is definitely an NFL caliber prospect because he can do so many games. I won't go too far and say, hey, these are superstar caliber players. But when you need to trust Sowell specifically, in crunch time, in a 2-minute drill, red zone opportunity, one-on-one, you're going to go to him. He has that spectacular catch ability. He can make plays at all three levels. That Sowell is going to be Penn State's number one wide receiver. But then that's really all I have to say about the group so far. Everything else is kind of to be determined. You don't really know. I have confidence in those three players, but what happens if one of them gets hurt? Okay, I'll tell you about the rest of the depth chart, right? That's what I'm going to do. That's why we're having this conversation. There are players with upside. There are players with potential, but when do they tap into that potential? Because we saw a lot from Kobe Howard as that versatile wide receiver. And remember, blocking is going to be the name of the game too. You have to be able to you have to have blocking ability to make it in this offense once again. So Sowell can do that. Eskilson can do that. Howard can do that. As far as any other receivers that are going to stand out, I'm going to need to see spring football practice. Talk to the coaches, right? There's players that Penn State was able to bring back in Peter Gonzalez, Lyric Samuel, who's a former 4-star out of the state of New York. They go and get another transfer portal wide receiver from Grambling State. This was a mostly run-first offense, but it's coming up from the FCS level. So, okay, what is he going to contribute at the Big Ten level? Well, that's where coaching is going to start to separate, because he's listed at 6'4", 210 pounds. He is a player that can be a threat at multiple levels. Short, intermediate, long passing game. He has the speed. Someone who's 6'4" and runs really fast. Okay, that's the kind of player that you want in a passing game. But will his game translate to the Big Ten? You would hope so. That's why Penn State brought him in as a transfer. But again, to be determined. So as far as Penn State's wide receiver room goes, how it's going to look initially, those are the three main players there with Chase Sowell, Brett Eskilson, and Kobe Howard. After that, Lyric Samuel, you would hope that he has a breakout season as a redshirt freshman. His issue was just adding the weight. He came in very undersized as a true freshman. If he's able to add on the weight so that he isn't pushed around and that he can be an avid blocker in this offense, okay. I like Lyric Samuel as a key contributor in year 2 as a redshirt freshman. Keith Jones Jr., I think coming over from Grambling State, he kind of fits that role. Okay, him and Lyric Samuel can be somebody that can make plays at all three levels, be a red zone target for them, in addition to the tight ends Andrew Rapplier and Ben Bramer, right? Also, let me also throw out Gabe Burkle too. I don't want to forget about him. And then, I mean, other names to know, guys that are coming over from Iowa State. Zay Robinson, Karan Brookins, guys that, again, just haven't really shown what they can do at the collegiate level yet, but they will be on the depth chart. Now, as far as the future of wide receiver goes, okay, so you have a nucleus to build around. Kobe Howard. I think Lyric Samuel's only going to get better and better. You'll have Keith Jones Jr. for multiple years. You imagine that Brookins or maybe a current 2026 player that's in the class of 2026, Ben Whitver from the state of Virginia, will ultimately break out in due time. But then the 2027 class, you have to absolutely hit this out of the park for baseball metaphor purposes, right? There are too many talented wide receivers we talked about New Jersey, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Penn State's wide receiver big board is loaded with talent. If you are not able to get talent in this cycle, then I'm concerned. Okay? You already are missing out on a couple of top prospects in the state of Pennsylvania. Keemon Spell's committed to Georgia. Maxwell Hiller doesn't have Penn State in his top final list of schools. The next two after that, Matthew Gregory and Khalil Taylor, guess what? They're both wide receivers. Those two players alone, if you're able to land them in the class of 2027, your wide receiver recruiting is basically done, because the star capabilities that they have, the star potential that they have, offsets, getting 4 or 5 wide receiver recruits just for the sake, this guy has upside or he has potential. He's a diamond in the rough type of player. Khalil Taylor and Matthew Gregory could both come in and be on the 2 deep depth chart right from the get-go. I fully believe that, watching what Gregory and Taylor have been able to do at the high school level. They are must-get prospects in this class of 2027. There's no other way to say it. But what hurts Penn State is there's just been so much inconsistency. One day it's Marcus Hagens recruiting for Penn State. Another day it's Terry Smith trying to bridge the gap with guys like Gregory and Taylor. And then you have Noah Polley. But Noah Polley gets poached by the NFL. And then you have Kashif Moore. So Kashif Moore's got to hit the ground running. I'm anticipating that Penn State's going to be able to get a couple of wide receivers, whether that is Khalil Taylor and Matthew Gregory, or Khalil Taylor and someone else, or Gregory or someone else. At least the recent recruiting intel from Rivals says that Penn State's in a great place with Matthew Gregory. Awesome. Khalil Taylor, well, that's to be determined, right? He still has a visit set up for Penn State, but it's just every single time. It's okay. This cycle, it's a new coach. It's a new coach. It's a new coach. So Kashif Moore has to fight those recruiting battles as soon as possible to get Khalil Taylor to say, okay, remember, Taylor was committed to Penn State once upon a time. Terry Smith, big part of that, since Taylor's from the Pittsburgh area. I'll throw another name out there in the state of Pennsylvania, Cade Cooper. So if you can land these 3 wide receivers in the state of Pennsylvania, Kashif Moore already home run higher out of the gate. But it's almost, I don't want to say that it's too easy for Penn State. Let me say this. It is favorable for Penn State that they can fix all of the wide receiver problems as quickly as possible, because you have been set up with a favorable opportunity with the talent that is right in your backyard. And then not too far away in New Jersey, that, okay, if you happen to miss on a player that maybe you shouldn't have, you can recover close by, right? You don't have to go searching in California or Texas, far away from Pennsylvania. There's a lot of talent that is locally nearby. So it's a favorable opportunity for Penn State. Doesn't mean that it's a guarantee, and I don't want to say that it's easy. I'm just saying this is setting up very nicely for Penn State to allow Kashif Moore to get started right away, get him hit the ground running immediately, and get Penn State's wide receiver room just back on track and not be a joke in college football. Now, Kashif Moore, wide receivers coach. What kind of pedigree does he bring? What kind of resume does he bring? We already started to talk about New Jersey, but what are his other connections? We're going to talk about all that coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Now, here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered in for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, we're talking everything. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking, hey, which team can make a deep run? This is the perfect time to lock it in. Futures this time of year, they're great because whether you're picking a team to win a conference title or the championship itself, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Final segment here on Locked On Nittany Lions. We're going to talk more about Kashif Moore, what he brings to Penn State, resume, pedigree, everything else. But begin by answering, was this the right hire for Penn State? And I'm going to trust Matt Campbell. I've said that already, and I'll say it again. Because Matt Campbell's 3 for 3 when it comes to hiring wide receivers coaches at the Power 4 level. 3 for 3 at Iowa State. Noah Pauley was supposed to come over to Penn State, but then Green Bay makes a phone call, so be it. But Noah Pauley, Nate Scheelhaase, Brian Gasser were all phenomenal hires and have now moved up in the coaching personnel rankings. They have all been promoted. Gasser's now the general manager at Michigan State, which means he's got an eye for evaluating talent and managing collegiate rosters. So he's the GM under Pat Fitzgerald now over in East Lansing. Then you have Nate Scheelhaase, who is, the passing game coordinator with the Los Angeles Rams. And he was interviewing for head coaching jobs at the NFL. So he's one of the rising stars in the NFL ranks. And then, Noah Pauley gets that same respect, and now he's invited up to the NFL. So Matt Campbell knows what he's doing. For the most part, Kashif Moore, under the radar, unknown hire. Because with what Penn State's dealt with in the wide receiver room, this is where I'm going to trust Matt Campbell's judgment and his hiring process. Because personally, I wouldn't have hired another rising star caliber type of coach. It works for Matt Campbell, but subjective to what Penn State has dealt with in the past few seasons, I think that I will trust that Kashif Moore is going to settle the wide receiver room down and get it back to where it's supposed to be. But I also think that he's going to need time. And does Penn State have that immediately? Or do they need somewhat of a quick turnaround? Somebody that's established. Josh Gaddis, for example, who coached at Penn State. Penn State fans probably remember him. Was really good wide receivers coach for Penn State once upon a time. Very critical when it came to recruiting. I would have liked to have seen him back in Happy Valley. That would have been my top target. Or how about Bobby Ingram with the Washington Commanders? So he was linked to the Penn State job, but when he allegedly interviewed, right, it was reported that he interviewed for the head coaching job. There was no way I saw him taking what would have been a metaphorical demotion because you were in the running for the head coaching job and now you're going to be the wide receivers coach. And he would also have left the NFL. I imagine his job with the Washington Commanders is pretty steady. So, but he would have come back to his alma mater, right? Somebody that's established, that's proven, that knows what they're doing, that can really just start to... So this would have been more about a PR type of move for the Penn State wide receivers room, just to kind of establish them again. So it's nothing against Kashif Moore, because Matt Campbell has done this not once, not twice, but 3 times, where Noah Pauley is a rising star, comes in and produces a few NFL caliber prospects. Nate Scheelhaase. And you see that, okay, he's an innovative mind. He's the passing game coordinator from a team that was 1 game away from the Super Bowl. And it's certainly the Rams passing game wasn't the issue in that game against Seattle for the NFC Championship. Obviously, Brian Gasser in a prominent role with Michigan State. So Kashif Moore, if he's anything like his predecessors, okay, then this is going to be a phenomenal hire. And Kashif Moore, this is where we can talk about him, is that he was the passing game coordinator, at least was going to be at Colorado State before Penn State poached him away, right? Big fish eats little fish So the NFL gets Noah Polley because they're bigger than, the Green Bay Packers are bigger than Penn State. But then you go to Colorado State, or if he was at UConn still, I know that he would have taken the job one way or another. So he was going to be the passing game coordinator. Okay, so it follows a similar suit here. Noah Polley was the passing game coordinator at Iowa State. Moore also has a track record that, okay, hey, he can develop NFL talent. You've probably seen the example a ton. Skylar Bell, UConn wide receiver. Over 100 catches, over 1,200 yards, over 10 touchdowns. Not over the course of his career, in one season. In one season, yes, at UConn. So there's proof that he can develop wide receivers. Because Skylar Bell went from a player that, okay, he was a contributor, he was a key cog in UConn's offense, to this guy's draftable. He took talent, made it better. Development. Okay, now you have the resources. Now you have the leverage at Penn State. So that's the idea here with Kashif Moore. Kashif Moore was a key contributor when he was a player at UConn. Never really had a steady NFL career, but then settled into coaching. He was a high school assistant. Then he moved up into the college ranks. Then he was a running backs coach actually at Cornell. Albany wide receivers coach, then settled in his alma mater with Jim Mora as the head coach, as UConn's wide receivers coach, and then he was going to be the wide receivers coach and pass game specialist at Colorado State before he was hired away by Penn State. So Skylar Bell is invited to the NFL Scouting Combine. He was a Biletnikoff finalist. Again, over 100 catches, 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns in a season for Skylar Bell. All at the direction of Kashif Moore. And I want to bring it back to recruiting. His primary focus is going to be New Jersey, but he has connections all throughout the Northeast. He'll establish himself in Pennsylvania. But the proof is there. So as much as I would have liked an established coach, somebody with deeper recruiting connections, he's proven it for the most part, right? You're going a lot off of potential here with Kashif Moore, and that's fine. So the idea is that you also want somebody that is going to stick around for a few seasons too. One of Penn State's biggest issues is that the wide receiver coach spot has been a revolving door. Someone's here today and then gone tomorrow. And part of that had to do with firing and not being able to, do the job effectively, right? But if Moore is able to continue to improve off of what he was doing at UConn, that's what you want. You want someone like Moore to, move up through the ranks, be the wide receivers coach, and then get more of a prominent role in terms of being the passing game coordinator and then being the co-offensive coordinator. And then maybe he continues to graduate, right? And at some point, who knows, maybe offensive play calling's in his future. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of the same evaluation that Noah Polley had, where he was just developing wide receivers, and then, hey, this guy has a knack for understanding game planning, so let's make him the pass game coordinator. Oh, and then he gets a phone call to the NFL. Is that going to be the exact trajectory for Kashif Moore? Who knows at the end of the day, right? But it's happened now multiple times. When Matt Campbell makes a wide receivers coach hire, it always works out. So high aspirations for Moore. And it starts right now. You have players like Kobe Howard and Lyric Samuel who can take that next step. They have NFL potential. Can you unlock it? And then can you use that as leverage in recruiting? Because there are tons of talented players that are waiting that you would like them to end up at Penn State. So that is what Moore is dealing with here right out of the gate. But can it get any worse? Can it get any worse? But no, I think Penn State makes the right move, mostly because of Matt Campbell's judgment. I personally would have gone in a different direction, but this hire doesn't happen by accident. That is where I'm going to wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. Also, Leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. Thank you for stopping by. If you're new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts so you do not miss out on conversations like these. And for more coverage around all your favorite Penn State sports teams, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.